So in the last video, which would have been part 3, we looked at adding a third scenario, and it was quite useful because it showed how I'd kind of messed up some of those scenario steps and made them kind of inconsistent with the others. So it showed the importance of making those scenario steps reusable and how that impacts on the code behind it. So what I want to look at today, I've made the other video today as well. What I want to look at now is a slightly more complex scenario here, where I'm going to pass some data into one of the steps. So my basic scenario is I had an active patient here with no prescription items. Here I've got an active patient, but I've got one prescription item and specifically no order history. So this is all just kind of stuff to do with a specification for a load of code that I know about. Don't really need to kind of worry about the detail about that. It's just the fact that I'm representing the requirements in these scenario steps, and I guess hopefully it helps to illustrate, even though the example might be slightly kind of unfamiliar. So my scenario here is to say, given I have a patient, which is similar to what we've seen before, and the patient NDD is null, which we have not seen before, because previously all 3 of my other scenarios use patient NDD is set to today. This is patient NDD is null. Patient status is active, we've used that one before, and their prescription has items, and then I've got an item here to add to it. We've not used that before. And the patient has no previous orders, we've not used that before. When I recalculate the NDD, we have used that before, then the patient NDD should be today. We've not used that. So we've got a few new items here. NDD is null, prescription has items, patient NDD should be today. And we're going to go and fill out those things. We can see that at the moment that test isn't being run because it's saying there are step definitions which haven't been implemented. So we can now just go straight to that code and start looking at it and implement it. So we've done those. So patient NDD, first one, patient NDD is null. We can see there it's just got the pending statement, so we know we need to update that. And so in there I can just say patient.ndd equals null. Happy as Larry. That's going to be a complicated one. So I'm going to come back to that. Here I'm going to say, so we're saying patient has no previous orders, so we're saying patient.orders.count, it's going to be count, isn't it, equals 0. And orders doesn't exist yet, so I'm going to go to patient here and create a new property which will be a list of orders. That's going to be called orders. It doesn't like that because there's no such thing as order, so we're going to generate order class. Happy days. Again, we don't need to fill anything in there at the moment. All we're doing is we're just generating the classes that we need as we go along. And in here, so we now need to also orders, order, that's that. So now hopefully that should sorry, I'm an idiot. And that needs to be clear, doesn't it? That's the one we used for doing that. Orders.clear. So we've emptied the order. We're making sure the orders list is empty. And the reason why that code, the reason why we're saying that has no previous orders is because in my code here, in my pseudocode, my kind of spec for this, I've said if the patient status is active, then set the original delivery date equal to the last original delivery date of the prescription item. And actually, I'm going to say if that's what am I saying? If there's no previous delivery date, then I'm just saying that it's going to use today as the delivery date. So yeah, our next delivery date is based on our previous order, but if we don't have a previous order, then set it to today. In reality, the real situation, the real project is a little more complicated than that. Little more complicated, not much more, little more complicated. But for the time being, this will do. We can't base a next date on a previous date if the previous date doesn't exist. So, prescription has items. Now, I'm going to just quickly look at my previous project because I can't remember for the life of me how I set up those items. So that's the code that I wrote there, so that's quite good, isn't it? Look at that. Just nick the code straight from there. Recent projects. Wouldn't it be great if you could do all, if you could write all code like that, just nick it from somewhere else. Marvellous. So just add that in there. So what I'm saying here is, so that's something, okay, let's refactor a code because I've made this, I'd actually made that slightly different. What I'm going to do there, I'm just going to literally just kind of wondering about whether to make those uppercase. So I'm going to make those uppercase. I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to call that prescription items, and I'm going to call that prescription item, and likewise there and there. And I'm just going to go to here, let's rename. So having updated that, that now works. Let's make that like that. Same as like that. Now we come back to here. So now it's just going to complain that now it's just going to complain that I don't have any properties on the prescription item. So I've got name and frequency. Prop string name. That's probably is going to be an int, isn't it? So now we come back to the NUnit calculator, so NUnit steps, table.rows frequency. What do we have in the feature? What is this saying here? Type table rows frequency. String to int. Okay, so let's just make that string for the moment as well. Keep that nice and easy. So we've now made that work. Create a new prescription item, give it a name equal. So what we're doing here, where we've got this table of data, this is basically the particular format. So one thing we've not talked about yet, and I will talk about maybe in the next video perhaps, is the language that's used to design these scenarios. But I wanted to get a bit further down the line with, you know, using some of it before we get into some of that. But what we're doing here is passing some data into this step. So we're saying, and the prescription item has items. We have a header row, which just has the names of our the names of each of our columns, and then the data that we want in there. So we're going to pass in one item that has an ID of 1, a title of pad 1, and a frequency of 2. When I receive that into this method, it comes through as a table of information, and I can access that table just in this way. So it's just basically got an array of rows. I've got an array of rows that I can just access then, named values. So I, in this case, go around, it's only one row, pick up the title and pick up frequency, and use that to populate the prescription item, and the prescription item then gets added to the prescription items list attached to the patient. Job's good, happy days. I've already cleared the orders. We're saying patient NDD should be today. So we say here patient dot NDD equals date time. Oh no, that's a riser. Date time dot today. Use today because it's just a nice easy one to get from the date time. Now I'm going to work out how to write fancy date code. So we can do that. Happy days. No idea what that means. So yeah, so let's try that. So let's try that now. If we run that, let's see if we get many errors. Hurrah! Look at that. So it's worked. Patient NDD equals today. No order history. So what happened? What was going on in our NDD calculator? NDD is null. Oh, sorry, I'm an idiot. That should have failed. So this actually highlights one of the kind of gotchas in this. Your code is only as good as the tests that you write, and if you write bad tests, which I have just written, then things will fail. It's a test. Then the patient NDD should be today. I know you all noted that was right. R equal patient NDD. I just can't get used to this kind of weird stuff that Windows does. It's just not like Macs. Patient NDD, date time today. Let's have a message that says NDD expected to equal today. Hopefully that should work. That as a test should work. And I think actually we're supposed to do it. That way round. But anyway, now when we run the test, we have a failed test because we're actually performing the assertion. So now we've failed because it expects it to be today, expects that it was null. And it's null because in our NDD calculator, we're doing that. We're saying patient NDD equals null, return patient. Not much good. So the code that I wrote before, that I was assuming I needed, I do need, but I shouldn't have jumped the gun. So I'm going to say if patient description items.count is less than or equal to 0, patient.NDD equals null, return patient. So active patient, but no description items. So here I could just say do that. And now, in theory, that should pass the test. So that actually was perfect in terms of just writing the code that I needed to write to pass the test. And now I can go on and I can look at the other scenarios, and we can build up and see actually when there's a previous scenario, it shouldn't equal today, and we'll start to kind of add in that functionality. But yeah, hopefully that's enough for this video. Next video we'll talk about the language of writing scenarios.